but I mean, that's what he needs for obviously.
Good evening. I would like to call the Nash County Public Schools Board of Education, October 28th committee meetings to order. The first committee that will convene on this evening is the Administrative Services and Operations, Committee. Mr. Duncan.
Thank you, Chairman Washington. I will now call the committee to order. Our first item of business, I guess we've got Frank, we've got Evelyn, and myself. That's enough. Tremaine, who do we have?
We have Mr. Sharp and Mr. Gray.
Okay, and Zach. So that's 4 to 5, I believe. With Donovan not being present. Is that correct? Okay. The first item in the agenda is just the approval of our meeting minutes from September 30th. This was part of your package. If everyone's had a chance to review it, I'll take a motion to accept. So moved. We have a first, we have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Bullock. We have a first and second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I've got a couple of action items on the budget tonight and then maybe a change in our budget for some discussion around another piece, but we'll get started with Mrs. Saunders to talk through a budget amendments. I think these are just being brought to us as we still work to finalize some state numbers in our overall budget. So she'll discuss these items, and if we have any questions, we can answer. Ms. Saunders.
Good evening, Dr. Washington and board members. We do have budget amendments for Fund 1, 3, and 8 that we're presenting this afternoon for approval. These are routine amendments. Some of the amounts may seem pretty large, especially if you're looking at Fund 8. You see that amount brought in. That is mostly our restricted revenue that is now posted into this year. Like it's money we already had, it's just now posted into this year after the audit. Okay, so these are a couple of changes coming down from the state where they have adjusted our allotments based on their revisions. Again, these are routine budget amendments, and we are asking that we take this to the full board for approval.
Any questions from Ms. Saunders, committee, or other board members? Hearing none, this is an action item, so if I can get a motion to approve these amendments to our budget.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Can we have a second?
Second.
We have a second for the motion. Any discussion or further questions? Hearing none, all the committee members in favor, please vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much, Ms. Saunders. The next piece we have, Mrs. Miller is going to come talk to us about a couple of maintenance bids. One's for an elevator and one is for, remind me.
For the installation of new theater
Of the new
seating
theater
in
seating,
the
that's right,
auditorium.
that's right. So 2 of our schools, I think are going to receive some improvements based on some of the money that we've received demerger. We're now getting some bids on that, but if you want to walk us through it.
Sure. We actually, these were 2 items that we were looking at. During demerger, we wanted to make sure and ensure that we have what we needed for the students and for the process of relocating the facilities prior to this. So we already have an elevator that is in use. At the time, we were not sure we would use it at Edwards for the upstairs. We are using it for 5th grade, and they do have an elevator, but it takes a lot of upkeep to keep it moving. So due to the fact that we now have 4 5th grade classes upstairs, we would like to replace that. And the complete installation we went ahead and got a bid on, and you will see the attachment with the lowest bid for DC elevator. And our hopes to take both of these recommendations to the full board for approval. The other is for the theater seating at Rocky Mount Middle School. We have already approved and got the handicap ramp, which we have revitalized and got a new ramp put in. We also have updated the lighting and the sound systems. All of that was in the process. We were waiting on the seating because at the time when we bid that out, we were looking at refurbished, and at this time, we can get new ones for the same price. So, we're just trying to bring that, and all of this, both of these transactions would be on demerger money that we have in place. Yes, sir.
Any questions from Mrs. Miller around these two items?
Question.
Yes, sir, Mr. Sharp.
Ms. Miller, real quick, accessibility to these elevators, who would have access and how would access be obtained?
It's already a usable elevator, Mr. Sharp. It's already in place for our EC, staff and for students.
Okay, and I'm just thinking about accessibility for just any kid coming by, want to jump on the elevator, try to ride it, during class period, or no one observing or monitoring the status of that?
Well, it would be just like the usable, elevator now, and they can access that if they have permission to leave the classroom. They're typically with their whole class when they're moving around, but there are incidences and they do get access to the elevator and or stairs.
So
The
there's no,
stairs are located right beside it.
so there's no controls on the elevator as far as access pass to be able to utilize, just free open elevators, correct?
Yes, yes, sir. Now we can put a lock on it if they're not working. Okay, so there have been incidences where they've gone out. Like I said, it's costing us more to keep trying to keep them moving than it is to replace it at this time. And we really do, for many reasons, to meet all of our codes and requirements. And sometimes we do have, some of our special needs students that are in the regular classrooms and they need that to be able to utilize.
Understand.
Yes, sir.
Understand. Thank you, man.
Yes, sir.
Anything else, Bill?
No, I'm good, thanks. Appreciate it, Ms. Miller.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? If not, Mr. Weber, would it be all right to vote these in unison, or do we need to separate the bids?
Unless you present the opposition to one or the other.
Feeling like we could probably move forward pretty quickly with both of these, I'm just going to combine both the bids for the elevator and the theater seats at Rocky Mount Middle into one called vote, if I can get a motion for that.
So moved.
Thank you, Franklin.
Second.
Mrs. Bullock, thank you. Any further questions or discussion from Ms. Miller or the staff? Hearing none, all those in favor, please vote by the sign of aye. Any opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then the next item is not on our agenda per se, but we have had some discussion there around annexation of one of our school buildings in the town of Nashville, and as kind of a polling of the board, I think was a desire to at least get some more information and have some discussion about pros and cons of what that might look like. So, Dr. Ellis, do you have a minute to update us on that, or kind of tell us where things stand?
So I believe on the last two weekly calendars I sent out, we don't feel like there are any negatives. We only see cons. I think it's really just an application process that we complete. I think Dr. Washington would sign it. Then they choose if they want us annexed in. So as far as cons, there are none. We'd save money. They would lose money. But that's the only thing we've heard. No other. That's all we can give you.
Okay, so that we can legitimately have a conversation, can you go ahead and amend the agenda, make a motion to amend the agenda to include that discussion?
Well, real quick, I mean, committee, would y'all like to amend the agenda so that we're adding it as an action item? So moved.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to amend our current agenda for the committee meeting, adding the annexation of Nash Central Middle by the town of Nashville as an action item to this agenda. Any other questions on that?
Correction.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll second that. I thought I was on your committee.
I thought you were too.
I even actually hosted.
Oh, you are, you are,
Yes,
you are. I overlooked that.
That's all right, but I want to make sure.
That,
Well, we're right, he was right. That's all right.
I overlooked your name.
I even conducted it one week.
So we,
You're right. I just wanna make sure.
okay, so we have a motion and a second to add item number 5A as an action item regarding the annexation of Nash Central Middle School. Any discussion, further points to address? All those in favor, please vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so the motion carries to recommend that to our board at our next board meeting. Dr. Washington, I believe that addresses everything that we have in committee, and we'll go ahead and adjourn back to you.
All right.
Did Mr. Miller's information get voted on?
Yeah, we voted on both of those in one, and then we just voted on the annexation.
Right, you voted
To
add
add
it
it
to
to
the
the
agenda.
agenda, not
Vote
vote
on
on
it.
it.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Oh, okay.
Can I adjourn if I've already adjourned?
I understand.
So
Our attorney.
our,
If I could just ask-
please, jump in.
I just asked a clarifying question. So is this a proposal to add approval of the annexation or to add a discussion about?
So what I asked for was to add an action item for us in committee to vote on the recommendation of this annexation. And I think we
To take
approved to add that to the agenda. Now we actually need to vote on it as a recommendation.
For the full board to approve the annexation next month.
Yes,
To
And
request,
sorry, has the
to
county or
request
the city
annexation.
presented you with any
I guess to,
Yes, ma'am.
We've had discussions with them, they feel like
I got you.
it's an application process, they either deny it or accept it.
So this is just one.
Correct.
so after clarification on this point, what we have is a motion, or no, what I would like to call, I guess, is a motion to approve, to recommend to the full board the application for annexation to the town of Nashville for Nash Central Middle School. Close? Good enough? Can I get a motion?
So move.
Second.
Mrs. Bullock, any more discussion? Beat on this
That
one.
was Chavis.
Another minute?
That was Chavis. Chavis. You said Bullock.
Okay. Dr. Chavis, all those in
We're
favor,
good.
please vote by the sign of aye to recommend this.
Aye.
Any opposed? Phew. I think that
Now we can adjourn.
Take it right.
the committee.
The next committee that will convene will be the policy committee, Ms. Bullock.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to call the policy committee to order. The first thing on our agenda is approval of the minutes, from our last meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as presented from our last meeting?
Make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. It's been moved and properly seconded that we approve the minutes of our last meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you. This evening, we have a few policies to discuss on the agenda. The first policy for discussion is, let's see, policy 2130. And with that policy, and I can't get it to come up on my computer, but with that policy, we had talked about changing the 30-day reporting time period. And at our last meeting, we tabled it so that that would give us time to have a conversation with our attorney and with the administration about whether that would actually work. Our goal is to try to save some time from processing checks for a minimal amount of money. And I've talked with the superintendent, and he's talked with our finance director. And the response to that is that if we do 60 days, then that will be well within time to have our forms processed within the fiscal year that we're going through. If we go to 90, we run the risk of going into another year. And our attorney has said that there is no reason legally that we cannot do this, that the conversation with, you're looking at me funny. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that this is within your discretion, so this particular policy is one of NCSBA's models, and this date, 30 days, that's their standard, but you do have discretion to alter it. I did some research to see what other boards do. There are some that are as low as 10 days, and there are others that expand it to 45. So you would be able to expand this to 60 days if you chose to do so.
So is there any discussion from any board member about the 60-day date for reporting? Any comments? If there are no comments, can I have a motion then to recommend to the full board that we change the 30 days in policy 2130 to 60 days for presenting our expenses for reimbursement?
I made that motion.
Is there a second? It's been moved and properly seconded that we approve making change to policy 2130 from 30 days to 60 days to process our travel form for reimbursement. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Thank you. The next policies are with minor changes, and as I looked at them, all I could see on them was changes down in the reference line. Is that all there is to this? Would anyone, I see heads shaking. So is there anything that someone would like to point out about these minor changes? If not, is there a motion that we approve, and I will call all of them off at one time? Policy 3620, extracurricular activities and student organizations. Policy 4040/7310, staff student relations. Policy 7130, licensure. Policy 4120, domicile or residence requirements. Policy 6200, goals of school nutrition services. And policy 9110, use and selection of architects, engineers, surveyors, and construction managers at risk. Policy 6430, purchasing requirements for equipment, materials, and supplies. And policy 6450, purchase of services. Policy 7650, travel and expense reimbursement. Is there a motion that we recommend to the full board approval for these policies?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we recommend to the full board approval of the policies that I just read. Are there any questions or is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Thank you. Is there anything else to claim the attention of the policy committee today? If not, I declare the meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Bullock. The next and final committee that will convene on this evening is the Academic Services and Accountability Committee. Vice Chair Lamb.
This time all board members are present or on Zoom. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So move.
Motion made by Shalonda Thomas Bullock, second by Bill Sharp. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed likewise. Motion carried. First item is next steps for low performing schools and federal designations. Melissa Nancy Smith and Janet Morris.
Good afternoon, Chair Washington, Vice Chair Lamb, and board members who are with us virtually and in person. Each year, the State Board of Education, during its September meeting, notifies school districts of any schools that are low performing. In order for a school to receive a low performing designation, in order for a school to receive a low performing designation, a school receives a grade of D or F, and the school does not meet growth or only meets growth. If a school has been identified as low performing, then there are some actions that the superintendent is required to take based on General Statute 115C 105.37. And those actions are: within 30 days of notification, the superintendent shall recommend to the board that the principal be retained in current position, recommend to the local board that the principal be retained in current position and a plan of remediation is developed, recommend to the local board that the principal is transferred or proceed under General Statute 115C-325.4 to dismiss or demote the principal. Step 2. In addition to that, the superintendent or its designee is required to submit a preliminary plan to the local Board of Education, and that will be shared with you this evening. In that plan, the superintendent shall ensure that the plan shows how the school will improve both the school performance grade and the school growth score of each school that is designated as low performing. Also, the superintendent will show how the central office administrators will work with each low performing school and monitor the low performing school's progress, and how current local school administrative unit policy should be changed to improve student achievement throughout the local school administrative unit. And lastly, the plan shall also include specific strategies to improve early childhood learning along with measurable goals. So if you look at the timeline unpacked, October 3rd actually launches the time when the superintendent makes his decision. Tonight, October 28th, I am sharing with you the preliminary plans, school improvement plans for the two schools that have been identified as low performing. Note that this should occur by November 2nd, but since November 2nd is a Saturday and the full board has not had an opportunity to convene, the preliminary plans are shared today, and then the timeline for step 2 actually begins November 4th. During this time, the public will have access to those two schools' plans and an opportunity to provide feedback. Then on December 2nd, which should be our next school board meeting, is when the board will approve the plans for those two preliminary schools that are low performing. On December 7th, those plans will be submitted to DPI and the NC STAR platform. The next slide, I will not read to you, but what it does is unpacks the timeline that I shared with you. In the next slide, I did share with you the parental notification of low-performing schools. There are some things within those letters that we must share with parents, and those things are outlined on this slide. Step 3, which will occur on December 4th, is after 30 days, the plans will sit. The board will have an opportunity to review the plans as well. And then on the 4th, the plans will actually be approved. Right now, they are preliminary plans. We are soliciting feedback from the community as well as feedback from our school board. And then the final step is on December 7th, we will upload those plans to the state's NC STAR platform. And if you move to the final slide, which reads submitting the plan.
Something.
Next one.
This is what the platform looks like. And if you look at the Student Success Comprehension Plan Report, those are the plans that we shared with you to view, because that is what DPI views as well. And those should be submitted by close of business on December 7th.
Evening.
Evening.
So, Mr. McLean, if we'll go to the next slide. We're going to flow into the federal designations and talk about those and what they mean for some of our schools. On the next slide is a reminder of a waiver that the North Carolina received in waiving the actually identification of new schools that were CSI and TSI for the 24-25 school year. So basically, they waived that requirement. But it is important to note that some schools could still exit that status. New schools, however, were not identified. So continuously underperforming or CSI low performing, we had 5 schools in 23-24 that were identified as CSI LP. Post-merger, we do not have any. Williford, being an early learning center, does not qualify for that designation. So Nash County Public Schools does not have any CSI schools at this time. Now we're moving into subgroup performance, and there are 2 categories for subgroup performance. The first one is targeted support and improvement continuously underperforming. So this is the watch list. This is where subgroups who have been underperforming are identified, and the hopes that we can prevent them from going to the next level. We had 17 schools identified in the 23-24 school year, and we had 17 schools identified in 24-25. The exact same schools, but you will note that 2 schools did have a subgroup exit, and they're identified in the green, and that was for Edwards Middle, now elementary school, and for Spring Hope Elementary. So this economically disadvantaged subgroup for both of those schools exited off of the status.
Can you go back to that for a second?
Sure.
With Edwards, since that was a middle school in the previous year, how are y'all doing that with it being an elementary now?
Thank you for asking. So we had 2 schools that, in changing their grade span configurations, did not change the school code, and federal designations follow the school code. So because Edwards Middle changed to Edwards Elementary and kept the 329, the federal designation stays with Edwards Elementary until they exit the status. Winstead Avenue, they inherited the designation basically because of Inglewood. They will keep that designation until they exit the status.
So are the personnel that are there still being held to the same accountability?
No, these are a little different than the state designations that Ms. Nancy Smith spoke about. These are federal. So there are some requirements when they get to the next level, but not the same requirements. So I think we'll answer that coming up in a few slides.
Yes,
Thank you for asking that. So to enter TSI, continuously underperforming status, a school subgroup would have a performance grade of F for 3 years. That's what it would take to enter. And then to exit, a subgroup performance of D for 2 years. So it's easier to exit than it is to enter. So that's the first layer of subgroup performance called continuously underperforming. That's the watch list. If a school stays on that watch list and then meets some other criteria, they advance to what is called additional targeted. And that's what you see here. We had 12 schools identified in the 23-24 school year. We had 10 identified this year. 2 schools exited. Spring Hope Elementary and Southern Nash Middle exited this status. You will note up there that there are 3 schools highlighted in red. I highlighted them because they have a 1 behind their designation, and that means they're cohort 1. So they've been this status for 6 years or longer. That means that if they were Title I, which 2 of the 3 are, and they don't exit this status by the end of this school year, then they will move into a new category called CSIAT. We're not sure what sanctions go with that new identification, but that is certainly on our watch list right now. So to enter this additional targeted support, basically a school would, their performance grade, that subgroup performance grade would have to be at a 32 or below, is what it amounts to. And then to exit, just as they did for the continuously underperforming, they make it easier to exit than they do to enter. So there's 3 different options, and you'll see the 3 up here. So the first one is that they have a growth index of 1 for 3 years, so a positive growth index of 1. They're on track to meet the long-term goals, which I put a link there. If you wanted to see the interim progress measures, you could see where every school is in meeting those long-term goals. Or they would be above that cut score of 32. And notice it says or. So if they meet any of those, they can exit that status. So there are things that the CSI and ATSI schools have to do. The one that is most important here is the school improvement plans have to be approved by our board annually, which is why we're here again, so that you can review and have the opportunity to ask questions about those plans. You'll notice the other sanctions there, but I'll let you read those. And then parent notification. Our ATSI schools have to notify parents of this status in 2 ways. They have to send home a letter, which are at the printers now, and then they also have to indirectly post their notice on their school webpage. Any questions?
Any questions for you, ma'am? Thank you, ma'am. This will be information on.
Mr. Lamb,
Yes, sir.
quick comment, and just to Ms. Morris and to the staff. There's a lot of information, and when it comes to, of course, educators would know, but those of us who are not educators, one of the things I found to be very helpful is just to sit down with someone to go over this process in the program. And I think Dr. Ellis and his team be more than happy to share that information, or if we want to learn more about this process, how it works. It was advantageous for me some years back. So thanks.
I agree, it is very difficult to understand sometimes because federal goes with subgroups. You know, we come up here and talk about, we only have 2 low performing schools, but when you break it down to federal, you're talking about the majority of ours are students with disabilities, which is a big one for all federal schools. So probably one day we can kind of come in here and kind of break it down because it can be confusing.
And I know it gets extremely confusing for the public when they see that information and not being able to comprehend and understand it, because it's like the financial side, it is extremely complicated. So I would just ask that Dr. Ellis, if you could make your team available, just if anyone wants to sit down and talk to you guys and review it, so they'll better understand it, to get them understanding what we're in the business about, educating children. So they'll understand your process, what you have to go through. Thank you.
And you approved this in December. What we could do at the next committee is probably go in a little bit more depth and show you, because I mean, you could have 800 kids in a school and 30 of them be students with disabilities, and you are now a TSI. You are. Yeah. You're there. So, we definitely could, we'll do a quick one for you. And, but the biggest thing is look at these school improvement plans, and any comments, just let us know.
Any other questions from a board member? Thank you. This time, the NCDPI DLI grant, Carolina ACI.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I'm here to present the NCDPI Digital Learning Initiative Emerging Technologies Grant. The Digital Teaching and Learning Department here at Nash County Public Schools was awarded $49,050 recently. It was approved by the North Carolina Board of Education. This will be to purchase 10 mobile podcasting stations for our students in mostly grades 4 through 13 across all curriculum areas, even extracurricular activities like our STEM challenges or sports. And this will promote literacy, creativity, and content creation, which is something our kids are really interested in these days. And I'm here if you have any questions, but this was for information only.
Any questions from board members? Thank you, ma'am. This time, field trips, Mr. White.
Good evening again. Mr. White has had a family emergency, so I am serving in his stead. Nash County Public Schools Board policy stipulates that all overnight and out-of-state field trips must be approved by the school board. You will see that there will be a total of 3 field trips. They are overnight and also out-of-state. I believe we have met the requirements for the teacher student ratio. If there are no questions, I submit this for approval.
Any questions from board members about field trips? I will entertain a motion to approve the field trip.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Busy, second by Sharonda Thomas Bolt. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed likewise. Motion carried. No further questions. I will declare this committee adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Lamb. And if there is no further business to come before this board on this evening, I will declare the committee meetings adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Amen.